Hi, my name is Annie Blue, and this is my 10th Recovering Through Grief podcast. Welcome, everyone. In starting, grief both recognizes what is irrecoverable and makes sure that we don't forget what must be remembered. No one escapes suffering in this life. None of us is exempt from loss, pain, illness, and death. When our life circumstances are shattered by the unexpected, grief seems to never be far from our awareness. Francis Weller shared that grief comes from the Latin word gravis, meaning heavy. We also get the words grave, gravity, and gravid. The word gravitas is used to speak of a quality in some people who can carry the weight of the world with a dignified bearing. My next guest, Cathy Slaght, carries her grief with dignity and gentle strength, even when the grief walls are crushing in intensity. Cathy witnessed an inexplicable human-animal connection with her wonderful dog named Sprout. Sprout, a precious Yorkie Dachshund mix, opened a door into Cathy's heart, not experienced before by her. It had been 10 years since she'd owned her beautiful German Shepherd Soldier. Sprout entered her life with a destined path of opening her heart in new and beautiful ways. Cathy Slaght is a quantum energy coach and explorer, an energy teacher, an entrepreneur, a published author, a public speaker, and a healing teacher and consultant. Her books include Push a Button, Power It Up, Wellness Technology for You, Clear, Connected, and Empowered, The Formula for Everything You Ever Wanted, Wisdom of the Words to Ponder, The Joyful Journey, 3 Transformative Steps to Permanent Weight Control, Ignite Your Life Force, Mind Blind, a fractal fairy tale for 2017 and beyond. Fractal Fairy Tales, the formula for entering a golden age, and her most recently published The Privilege of Being a Human Being. Her website is Cathy D as in dog, Slatt.com. Moving forward with our featured podcast today, grief summons us into a territory that lessens us to our most defenseless state. The loss of a pet, the loss of that unfathomable human-animal connection, and the loss of a pet via violence attached to its passing perforates the soundness of mind of one's world. Pet loss is different than losing a human. Pets do not judge. They don't see our foibles. They just look at us and say with their eyes, "I love you." According to the Association for Pet Loss and Bereavement, there are grief stages with losing a pet. Stage 1, which occurs right after the death, manifests as shock, disbelief, and sometimes denial. The grievers bounce back and forth between the next stages 2, 3, and 4. Stage 2 is anger, distancing, and alienation. Stage 3 is guilt, anger turned inward that is self-imposed. Stage 4 is depression that arises due to the pact we have consciously and unconsciously made as pet owners with our animals to always provide protection. Stage 5 is marked by resolution. From out of the deep recesses of loss, our speaker today witnessed these stages related to her deep bonding, commitment, and connection she experienced with her dog, Sprout. Thank you for being here, Cathy, and having the courage and willingness to share your sorrowful story of losing your precious heartmate, Sprout.
Well, thank you, Annie. And I didn't even realize I'd written all those books.
I know, it was so fun to write them all out. I was like, wow.
I had no idea. Oh,
I know.
My goodness.
What a testimonial.
Oh, dear. Oh, dear. But most of them are very simple little books. And the one about the final one, The Privilege of Being a Human Being, is the story of Sprout.
I know. I'll look forward to it when we get to it. Yeah. Sounds great.
Anyway, so how would you like me to get started here?
So if you want to share your wonderful saga of how Sprout came to be a part of your life, including his darling name, because it's such a delightful narrative.
I absolutely did not want a pet. I had Soldier, the German Shepherd that I loved dearly, for 10 years. He died of cancer, and that was devastating as it was. But he, in all fairness, had always been in poor health. He was in poor health when we got him. And so we'd always known that even though he was a huge dog, he was fragile. And still, the grief was terrible to the point where I did not want any more pets. And my daughter saw a little Yorkie on Facebook that was part Dachshund and started pestering me about it. And I'm like, no way, I'm too busy. I don't have time for this. So we made a deal. We actually went shopping on a Saturday. She wanted to go the next day to look at this little pup. And I said, I'll make you a deal. If we see any Yorkie at all while we're out shopping, that's my sign we should go look. And we did not see a Yorkie, which would be unusual really in St. Pete. We're quite a dog-loving city, but we didn't see a single Yorkie. And I was just gloating until we turned a corner, and there was a great big sign, and it was introducing a vet's office with a little Yorkie on it. And so I had said, I need a sign, and we got a sign. So we had driven up, and she was disappointed when she saw the pup because he had no apparent dachshund in him. She's a big dachshund lover, and this was all Yorkie as far as his looks. And she said, okay, Mom, you don't need to take this dog, but it was too late. I was taking him. I was taking him. And so that's how this all came to be. And I think what happened, I had gotten so caught up in my work and was really a horrendous introvert because I'm at this SRC all day and into the evening, and I love it. I'm happy about it. But this little dog got me out, and we began to walk and do things, and he became the one actually as an animal that opened my heart. I didn't realize how closely and tightly I had sealed my heart. And so to lose him when he was only 3 years old and the way he was lost was absolutely, and somebody mentioned this today, they said, any loss, and of course, you think of people who've lost children and these horrendous experiences, but when murder is involved, it takes it up another notch, and that's what basically happened. My little dog was murdered.
So, wow.
Yeah.
Are you comfortable with telling the story? But first, will you tell us how you got to the name Sprout?
Well, simply, we were talking about names, and we were on the interstate coming back from, really, it was the Ocala area, so we drove all day, and there was a sign for the health food store, Sprouts. And I said, Sprout, and that was the name.
Oh, that's great. Okay,
I
know you had told me. Yeah, that's a great story. Okay, so I apologize for interrupting you. Go ahead.
No, please interrupt.
Okay.
Well, I guess I can tell you the story as it was, and then you can edit what you need to edit. But it turned out, and I've done this energy work for many years, a little over 20 years, and it turned out that someone was sending me bad energy. And that the result of it, as I was later told, was that I was out walking Sprout, and a German Shepherd, of all things, a German Shepherd, and I love German Shepherds, broke out of his fence and killed Sprout right before my eyes.
Wow.
And I was later told that there had actually been a hit on me and that Sprout took my place.
Wow.
Now, I will not ever know if that was true. You know, we can't believe everything we're told. But the woman, I was pretty desperate, so that's why I had consulted someone. And she told me that, but then she told me something else that nailed it. She said, however, Sprout wants to come back. Mark your calendar. You will have him January 29th. And I'll be doggone if she wasn't right.
Wow.
And that was quite an experience. She said, he's not far. And as it turned out, there was a Yorkie, mom and pop type place. And they had a litter. And one thing led to another. They had a huge waiting list. But someone whose turn it was to get a pup, there were 4 pups, couldn't take one. He said, give the pup to someone you think deserves it. And she was aware of what had happened with Sprout and called me and said, we'd like you to have, of course I bought the dog, but we'd like you to have this dog. So the lady that told me the date and all these other things, she was exactly right.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it really was. And what was interesting, I had a medical doctor friend who was also very gifted energetically, and he was crazy about Sprout. And this guy, we called him Doc. He would come over. I had some light therapy, and he'd come over and sit under the light therapy. And when I would tell Sprout that Doc was coming, he would wait by the door. He loved him.
Oh.
It was so precious. And so what happened is Doc had a dream about Sprout and called and said, oh my gosh, you've got to tell this woman that you've got to have first pick, because Sprout came to me and said, don't let them give me away. And I said, I can't do that. I'm lucky to even be getting a pup. And if I call her and say I got to have first choice, she's not going to let me have a pup if she thinks I'm trying to replace Sprout. So what happened, which was very interesting, I was the last one to go, one last pup. They put him into my arms, and he just nestled up and began to lick. And their jaws dropped, because apparently the other 3 people who had come, when they picked him up, he shook uncontrollably. They thought he had a neurological problem. So, so that was just another element of strangeness in this saga.
And what did you name that new puppy?
He is named Sir.
Cool.
I don't know why he's named Sir. I had some people say you've got to name him Sprout because it's Sprout. I don't know that my belief system incorporates that.
That he is the
right. I don't know that my belief system incorporates that.
Yeah.
But he certainly is a gift from God.
Well, that's all that matters.
It is all that matters. Yeah.
And that your heart was able to mend through what you endured.
Well, I have to tell you, you never really get over it. There are places I can't go in, certain places that I went in before to get his food. I had to go to a new place. I can't go certain places that he and I used to walk. Mm-hmm. There is an element there. And I guess it's probably, but I do want to share with anyone who goes through any kind of a shock like this. One of the things I ended up doing that helped me tremendously was something called meridian tapping. And you can find plenty of information online, because I couldn't walk out my front door. I was that traumatized.
Wow.
I started looking for something to help me. And that's what I found, and it did help. At least it got me back on my feet.
How did you find it?
I was looking on YouTube's. And what was I looking for? I can't remember. I was looking for something specific. I believe it was just an EFT to follow for grief. Mm-hmm. Because the 2 things that had happened, one is I couldn't walk out my front door, but the second is that my mouth filled with boils.
Oh my God.
I mean, I was a wreck. And so, anybody that goes through this, we realize that it really tears you up physically.
I agree.
And I think I found, instead of a nice free YouTube, I found this guy that did meridian tapping. And of course, I tested with my SRC, and that's what I resonated with. So I spent the money, and it was well worth it.
And what does SRC stand for?
SRC can stand for several different things. You can call it Stress Relief Companion, or you can call it Spiritual Real-Time Connection.
I like them both. Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify because you're saying
Yeah, the software, energetic software, yeah.
Well, so you were marginally able to navigate the necessities of eating, sleeping, and self-care, which is so understandable with everything you endured. Some refer to this as a time of living in the ashes, as the soul in grief feels reduced to the place where all other thoughts or matters deplete to ash, which it sounds like what you described. It takes self-discipline and eventual determination to learn to hear and sometimes stop thought's dominance during these times. You had such monumental hurdles with Sprout's loss. It was so horrendous. Yet amidst it, you drew to you your large network of healer friends like Doc and then the new person you found on YouTube, who were available to offer it during these desperate moments, understanding to keep you emotionally afloat. To the best of your recollection, how were you supported through this time of being okay to not be okay, most especially by the ones close to you that you love?
Oh, I was blessed. I was blessed with good friends, and they all knew Sprout. And I have to say, there are many that would hear such a story and say, "My God, it was a dog." And I get that. Believe me, I get that. With the terrible things people have been through, I get that. But my friends knew that I was a changed person from that little dog. They knew how much it meant to me, and they were amazing. And so I was blessed in that way. And I have to say, too, with the tarot cards that you pulled, were these unique for me?
Yes, but
right.
We'll get to those. We'll get to those.
All right, yeah, okay, because that does fit into. But no, I was very blessed. And with my daughter. My daughter is actually, it was kind of funny. Of course, I didn't tell her any of the things about speaking with someone who said I had a hit on me or anything. You know, our daughters don't accept that kind of stuff or want to. But she said, "Mom, you know, there's this Yorkie place out on Madeira Beach. Too bad they rarely have any litters, but isn't this an interesting place?" And that ended up, that is where I found Sir.
Oh, I love it.
So she played a big part too.
Well, and you have so many. Well, first of all, you're a teacher and mentor of your energy work that you do. So you have a really nice group of people around you that are very, what I would call, awake and alert to healing with energy.
Mm-hmm.
But you have so many wonderful friends, and you know, my sense is that there were a lot of people around you that were very comforting. Yeah. One of the things that they say with pet loss is such a minimalization to tell people it's just a dog. I haven't, in anything I've, researched related to pet loss, it for so many, it's bigger than anything or anyone in their life is to lose a pet. There's just a special kind of connection that you have there. So, to even accept anybody that minimizes in that way would cause me to go a little bit of a different direction from them, because they're missing the point, because everyone, and especially nowadays with what we just went through with the pandemic, there are so many people, their pets are helping them get through and have helped them get through.
Yeah. Well, I figure they just don't understand. It doesn't turn me off. I figure they just don't understand.
I agree. I totally agree. They haven't been touched in that way.
No.
So Dr. Gregory Burns is a pet behaviorist, and she has done much research and study into the social intelligence of dogs. Dogs were the first domesticated animal, and dogs are fascinating regarding their sensory olfaction, which enables them to identify people and other dogs in their household by smell. She states that dogs have representations of us that persist when we are not there. They miss us when we are gone. They remember they're humans. They truly, truly care about them. It's fascinating how their olfaction abilities provide a neurobiomarker of the dog's personality. So what special and or fun abilities of social intelligence did Sprout display that were significant to you?
Oh my goodness. Well, that's a hard one to answer. He was just my sidekick. And he had people he absolutely loved. And when they would come for a session, he'd be right in their lap. He had others he didn't care for so much. He always knew how to manipulate me into going on a walk. And he had a little terrier in him, of course, the Yorkie part. He also guarded the house.
See, that's what I was going to ask, if he was also a protector.
Yeah, he certainly was, as is my little Sir, who is actually a smaller dog. Sprout was 7 pounds, Sir is 5, and he is one tough little terrier.
They're so great, those little teeny ones like that. I just
Oh
love
my gosh, I know it.
They're so fierce.
They are.
Well, so wasn't there a time too when Sprout was able to sense energies that weren't good in your house?
Sprout, it gets convoluted here, but yes, I had someone astral projecting into my home. This is how crazy this story gets. And Sprout was actually seeing it and was barking at the portal in the home where apparently this person was coming. I thought I had rats. I'm like, what's up there? But later, that got identified as, so yeah, Sprout was definitely seeing that.
I mean, which is just so cool. I mean, that's exactly, what that behaviorist was talking about, is that they can really track because of their abilities, their olfactory, abilities, that they know. And it doesn't, just because you're formless and might be some sort of a spirit, doesn't mean that they can't figure that out.
Well, and the little dog, Sir, is more so. Maybe that is, that's maybe one argument for it being Sprout. Sir not only sees these things in clients, but if someone has been vaccinated, he carries on like you can't believe. It's terribly embarrassing.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. Well, I had a person I used to go to years ago, that was a massage therapist, and her dog would lay under the table for every single client and then go throw up. So
my goodness.
It's like it took on and did the healing for those people, and then released it for them. I mean, it was very gifted. It was another smaller dog, not Sprout, but it was a mutt. But yeah, I thought that was so cool. So that's why I asked that question, because just the fact that Sprout could figure out who he wanted to figure out, what was safe for you. So the greatest mysteries we face present themselves at the portals of life and death in our journeys to self-realization. Coming to trust the descent into the dark waters of grief is not easy. Grief's moods call us back to soul. Love ignites consciousness, and through love we feel presence, connection, wonder, and joy. Your grief says that you dared to love. Grief is how the soul recounts the depths to which Sprout touched your life. Many have shared, as I said before, they cried more deeply for the loss of their pet than when a parent died. Sprout's loss is still in its early years. How has grief recovery affected the quality of your life and impacted your health?
Well, that's a good question, too. I definitely changed my work very much to incorporate helping others. It gave me the realization of this terrible pain that others go through. So it did impact me in that way. As far as grief recovery, you just have to look at the lessons you learned, and you take it a day at a time. I don't think I'm 100% recovered.
Oh, no way you can be. This takes so long, and it's different for each person.
Yeah, but I do want to say also that you can't dwell on it, and you have to look. I'm a natural law person that says out of all these things, when you have this type of negativity, there is a lesson to be learned, and there can be something positive in it. Does that make sense?
Well, for sure, because, of duality and polarities. So, we have in the world we live in, we have that balancing that's always at play, where for everything that is on the suffering end, we're going to also get the other side of it as well, that is going to help bring balance to the situation. Yeah. So we were talking about that Sir came into your life and grief recovery. Are you grateful that Sir came so quickly after Sprout's passing?
I wouldn't have probably gone so quickly, but it just was so clear that it was meant to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I was ready, but it just fell into place. What happened is, Sir, I called the lady. I didn't call her. Kara had pointed out the website, and I contacted her and just asked if there had been a recent litter. And that freaked her out because they had just had the litter and they never told anyone until they opened their eyes, which was 2 weeks. That's what opened the communication. The woman emailed me and said, I need to know why you're asking me this. So I told her what happened. And the next day she called me and she said, we don't really take anyone anymore for our waiting list. The list is so long. But my husband said, because of what happened to you, we're going to put you on the waiting list. And I guess later she said the reason then when that apparent opening came that she chose me is because I had said I didn't want the German Shepherd to be put down. And so because again, I'm a German Shepherd lover as well, and I don't know all that happened there, but regardless, that is what made the difference. But yeah, I would have waited. I wouldn't have so quickly done that.
Right, because a lot of people talk about it because there's many that go ahead and do them, but I've also listened to enough people talk about pet loss that they really do recommend if you can,
Oh, yeah.
if you're able to wait. But in this case, whoever Sir is was ready to come into your life now, and there was no if buts about it.
Well, and without giving names, the name of the person who apparently sent the bad energy, because this did all get identified for me. The first name of the woman with the Yorkie place, that was the same first name. The last name of this person was her husband's first name.
Wow.
So that is pretty wild.
That's so eerie. So basically what you're saying is the person where you got Sir, that husband had the same last name? His first name was that last name?
No, the first name, this lady had a first name and a last name that both could be proper names.
Uh-huh.
So this lady, her first name was the lady's first name, and her husband's first name was the lady's last name.
That's just wild, Cathy.
So it was that was wild.
That's almost like a quick karmic turnaround or something.
Well, when you do quantum stuff, you kind of notice that. Yeah, that in itself was wild.
Wow. So there's go ahead.
No, go ahead.
There's a magic and potency to the creative process, as you have exemplified for decades through your practice as a healer, always researching more and more to update your Cathy Wisdom Medicine Library of inner and outer knowledge. There is an understanding reflected out there in the world that as we form our beliefs, we limit or expand the potential use of our creative energies in the tangible reality we are creating. When healing through grief, we find ourselves vacillating between the nostalgic pulls of the past and possible promises of the future. How have you treated yourself through this recovery process with Sprout? Are you able to stop when grief's intensity creeps in and offer yourself patience and time for the moments to unfold to re-regulate your re-entry back into the world? So are you able to stop and take care of yourself when the grief does come in?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Beautiful. And you also have your SRC work that you do that's very helpful as well.
Well, you do what you have to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And like I say, it's one step at a time. First, you go to bed. I was in bed for a few days. And then I got the tapping, which I highly recommend. For me anyway, it definitely got me back on my feet, and so on and so forth. You just take one step at a time, and I believe you're guided.
I do too. And it's just hearing the guidance and acknowledging the symbols and things like that come to you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's amazing. It can be, for me, lots of times it's songs. I'll hear a song.
Yes.
And it's usually when I get in the car and turn on the car, and I don't necessarily listen to the radio, but it'll just happen to be on, and it's just so fun. So there's an 82-year-old Scottish woman named Edna Klein Reckey, an artist and animal lover, who spoke of the Rainbow Bridge. She believed when our pets die, they go to this Rainbow Bridge, and in the future, when you die, the two of you meet up and cross the Rainbow Bridge together. With hearing this, what perceptions and observations do you have about the death of a pet, most especially with a relationship like you shared with Sprout? Do you believe pets have free will? Do you believe in something like a rainbow bridge? And do you consider that you and Sprout will reconnect at some point again? I can answer those one at a time if you want.
No, that's okay. I don't know about the Rainbow Bridge and all these things. I do believe that Sprout and I will reconnect. And I will tell you, my dear friend Doc passed after Sprout passed, very unexpectedly. And I believe that Doc and Sprout are together.
Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah. And I believe that I will be with Sprout again.
That's beautiful. So it's so neat just to hear. And then with something like this, when you're not in the serious heart pain of it, and you go into that observer self looking at it all, do you find a bigger picture to it as well?
I do. I'm still down kind of in the corner of the picture.
Yeah.
But I do see. Yeah, I do see. I'll tell you, years ago, my goodness, I don't want to tell my age now, but let's just say it was 30 years ago. I was in love with a man, and we were talking very seriously about marriage. And he had just been to see me. He was a school teacher up in Alabama, and he died while online with me.
Whoa.
And that was also devastating. He was young, 43 years old, had a heart attack and died. I flew up there. He was in intensive care for a few days, but they could not save him. And at that time, when I came back, of course, I was a wreck. I was in real estate at that time, and I couldn't function. And a friend got me a psychic reading. And I don't really go for a lot of that stuff, but she had gifted me with a psychic reading, and I did go. And what the woman said, I'll never forget. She said, no, he went out happy because he filled his karma with you going through this experience, because you're going to end up working with pets.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And many years later, I don't know what the directions. I know I'm certainly interested in doing whatever I can do in that direction. But at the time, of course, when you're in that kind of grief and they tell you something like that and you go, pets, But I think maybe, it's hard to tie the two things together. But I always wondered if maybe because of Sprout's loss, I do have an intention. You and I have talked about this, of maybe someday having a little business called the Sprout House, and having literal sprouts for people to recover their health and get some nutrition.
I love it. So when you say little sprouts, what does that mean exactly?
Just broccoli sprouts and bean sprouts that you grow yourself.
I was thinking you had always meant that, but I also wondered if there was going to be like little sprout stuffed dogs or something like that.
No, I did. Now I don't think at my age now, I'm not going to go so far as this, but initially I thought I might have maybe people come in and have a little cup of tea and maybe have one or two foster dogs that might get adopted.
Which they're doing so much more with stuff like that, where they're taking the animals into assisted.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's just so many cool things happening. They're taking animals into prisons.
Yes. Oh, yes, because they're so healing. Absolutely healing.
Which is what we most want.
Yes.
So the death of a pet brings forth a surge of powerful emotion, as you've described, and we all know, thus provoking an earnestness to do a review of the circumstances surrounding our pet's passing. Sarah Hogan, the director of veterinary medicine on a TED Talk show, stated that for those making a euthanasia decision and giving their best friends a soft goodbye hurts so deeply. It's nice to remember that your first rescue with Sprout brought him absolute joy because he got to have you as his mama. Unfortunately, your surprise turn of Sprout's prognosis did not give you the desired moments to share with Sprout in a conscious completion and desired goodbye. I'm sorry that with everything else, his saga took such a fast turn at the vet. Do you want to share what happened there at the end?
Well, he was at, of course, the hospital. And actually, we thought he was recovering. And in the middle of the night, he had, and meanwhile, I had been begging them to let me come to see him. And they were like, this is COVID. We can't have you in here because of COVID. Well, and this was rather strange. He had a turn, well, the whole thing is strange, I guess. He had a turn in the night. And I always wondered if it was because he thought I left him. And what happened is he passed. And whereas before, I believe if I had been able to get in there and be with him, things would have been different. But before, they couldn't let me in. They sure could let me in to pay the $8,000 dog bill.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
And it really, that's the one thing, if I could ever change the industry, that was terrible. That was just absolutely terrible. And like I say, I do believe that he probably wondered where I was.
Yeah. So in doing your review, that was the biggie thing that most came up for you, was just that wondering if he really died because he was so sad that you didn't come in.
Kara and I, by the time they said he was quite a little fighter, and he was, I would call during the day numerous times, and he's sitting and tough little dog. And Kara and I were, looking at little strollers so we could walk him with his strollers till he recovered. And then, like I say, just an abrupt change in the night.
Wow, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, and so there's a lot that needs to change.
I agree. So it's also a big hurdle to move through when your main instinct as a loving dog owner is to protect Sprout, which was threatened in aggression. That level of low frequency aggression, which gives those involved no choice but to be locked into combat that can only lead to a destructive dynamic, brought forth an understandable trauma response for all involved in the moment it occurred, which was the German Shepherd, yourself, and Sprout. The other dog had a stubborn persistence to fight no matter what the outcome. Finding meaning in Sprout's death nagged at you soon after like there was something missing. Your spiritual sensors kept returning you to the intensity of the way he died, which heightened the urgency to comprehend why his passing was so violent and happened to such an extreme. Through your scrutiny and examination with other healers' assistance, you did discover more about his leaving. If you're comfortable, you shared some of it already, Cathy. Please share what you discovered and the deeper thread connected to it that has plagued your life.
Well, I don't know that I am comfortable, but I will say that up to that point, I mean, we all work with energy, but I really wasn't aware of the level of dark energy out there. And I don't know if I can go into it more than that. But again, like I mentioned, years back, I lost the man that I mentioned, and so on and so forth. And it did cause me to retrace some things in my life and try to make some changes to clear that.
To the thread. Yeah, it's like a thread that has brought in some of those energies that don't make sense when they're especially something like this. This is just a crazy story. I mean, because that dog jumped a fence, didn't it?
It broke it was fenced and it broke the gate open. I mean, and this was our regular walk. We were doing the walk we did every day. We did a lot of walking, but in the morning I'd put the coffee on and we'd have our walk, and this was the very same walk. And that wasn't even the dog's yard. He was in his the in-laws' yard apparently. But I can't tell you more than that, other than I recommend, if people have gone through these different types of things, they might also want to do some lineage work, some generational work, and see about their own family and maybe some energies that have passed down.
That totally makes sense, because there's so many more people now that are out there that are starting to understand the ancestral ramifications that we carry within us, and, you know, genetically, where, you know, we could have had somebody that fought in the Civil War and died abruptly, but didn't get to do the healing, and that continues to carry through, where there's reactions, and some, you know, some of the things we do emotionally and in a reactive way that don't make sense. Yeah, like we get done sometimes to look at ourselves and go, where did that come from? And I do really believe that, you know, dark energies or good energies, we can have stuff track on through all our lineages like that, and come up where, you know, like in you know, some other threads that you've encountered, where you just had this continuing thread that seemed to bring, you know, abrupt endings, and this one was just, it was just so crazy. It was just, it didn't make sense.
Well, and you actually make me realize, even as we talk, this one is the one that opened my eyes to that possibility.
Which, I mean, which isn't a way that we would wish for us to get that information, but then again, you know, everything makes a difference in our life that happens to us if we can just step away from it and see it in more of an observer way, and to really, like you were called to in this instance, look at, why would something of this, you know, horrendous magnitude abruptly come at you like that?
So, that's right. And with awareness, I believe you then can heal. But when you're in denial, you don't want to consider that possibility. That may be another story.
Well, and that if only stuff is just, I mean, it takes such a long time to go in and out of those different stages that I talked about at the beginning, and even the review. I mean, in other people that I've interviewed related to grief, the reviews don't just happen right after. They happen over and over and over, because there'll be like different morsels of it that you hadn't remembered because you were just so numb and in such agony. And then all of a sudden some little thread or piece will come forward. And just like even now, there's just a bit more that you're learning related to it. And that is how it works. That is how grief, you know, is a portal for us to learn and heal. But it's very, you know, well, I called it in my last interview, a long breath. That you go through. So life is sacred, and being is sacred. Finding the reverence for life again with pet loss of this magnitude of heartbreak is a long-term path with many twists, turns, hills, and gullies. Have you, and if so, how have you gently spoken life into your life through all this, as well as prior grief that may have materialized with Sprout's passing? We've kind of talked about the threads that you're starting to uncover, but, you know, I know you got Sir, but what other things do you recall that you've done for yourself along the way? Are you more self-nurturing?
Probably not. I'm working on all that. I kind of always buried my pain in work. And with Sprout, I wasn't able to do that. With that one, I was flattened and could not work for a while. So, but then I think, again, I got back into my normal routine, and only now, with a few other recent events, have I started really digging deep in this.
Yeah, I mean, it totally makes sense. Within the mythic hero's journey, there are 3 recognized junctures: departure, initiation, and return. Determination to forge ahead is tested throughout. All that is familiar and secure disappears, and all feels lost during the departure stage, such as when you lost Sprout and with what you've been discussing so far. In persevering to move ahead, despite the barriers and boundaries, your transformation through initiation and to the stage of return is witnessed in your most recent endeavor in relation to Sprout. You have brought forth a beautiful book of imagination, words, and images to keep Sprout's spirit ever present and remembered for his blessed outpouring of pure love. The privilege of being a human being is delightful and lighthearted in its delivery. Please tell us how this book came to be.
Well, I started I write these little fractal fairy tales. I don't know why. I just enjoy writing them. And they're quantum. And so I just decided to write a little story about Sprout coming back. And it, like I say, it took a while. It took me a long time to write this little story. But it is the idea, the theme of the book is unconditional love. And at the end, Sprout has a choice. He has worked his way up to be a human being. That's the theme of the book. In my story, he comes back as a much lower life form, works his way up to being a puppy. Because of things he'd done in another life, it's pure fantasy. And at the very end, he has the opportunity to now evolve to being a human being, which is, in all fairness, a great privilege when we realize the capability we come in with. But he makes a different decision. So it's really a story of unconditional love.
I love it. It's a delightful book. I recommend it for anybody that's doing any kind of pet loss grief. It's just one of those that lightens your heart, and who knows, maybe it will also give people the creative urge to go ahead and write something related to a pet they've lost. Because I just think it's a great thing to do that kind of tribute. So you've shared that you're going to, hope to someday have a Sprout house where you have the herbs. And let's see. So in closing, the pain of a pet loss is real. Currently, tools are available for those recovering through the grief of the loss of their pet. Colleen Rowland, president of the Association for Pet Loss and Bereavement, shares of the organization's online chat rooms, open 6 days a week, they're trying to make it be 7, that are helping many. These pet loss support groups, as stated by the association, are a safe place that provides a non-judgmental environment for individuals or family members to meet and share their emotions before or after the loss of a beloved pet. They have found how helpful it is to share your feelings with others who share similar struggles. They offer coping strategies such as writing a letter to your lost pet or writing a letter from your lost pet to yourself. Getting creative with self-designed markers that can go where the pet is buried, and or shadow boxes with your pet's pics and memory tokens is another tool of bereavement they share. Your Sprout Recovering Through Grief journey, Cathy, has taken you from struggle to perseverance to honor. Your bereavement and self-care involved transmuting aggression and the darker side of animal nature, bringing you into the highest form of a holy warrior. Honor and death have always been closely associated. The ultimate honor is to give your life for the sake of another. In this sorrowful saga, your being of light, Sprout, embodied his honor as a stronger force surrendering to a weaker force, the power of darkness. Every true act of honor endures forever, as Sprout continues to liberate and inspire others through his book and eventual herb store. The highest potential in any being, including our beloved pets, resonates within the field of honor. Sprout is a beautiful reminder of all that is precious in our world. As always, I like to finish with a tarot reading. Are you okay with doing that today?
Oh, sure.
Okay. So I'm using a different kind of cards today, which is really, really fun. And we'll have these posted in the on the when people are listening to this. I'm going to use Psy cards, which is PSY cards, which are both interesting and worth witnessing. They were invented in the 1980s by Nick Hobson, and their inspiration does come from tarot cards. They are firmly influenced by Carl Jung, a famous psychologist who worked with archetypes and the collective unconscious, and are designed to relate to the human condition. What makes us us? The question for today, this was so fun. I love how the questions come up for me in these readings at the end of my interviews, and they're always intuitive. And the question that came through was, if a miracle happened and you were given the opportunity to live your most authentic life, what would be important to you in that authentic life? So the first card that came up, which is so cute because you said that that's how you've gotten through a lot of your emotional life, was work, but it came up to be work.
Mm-hmm.
So in looking at the card of work with all its cogs and wheels and everything that's on it, what comes up for you when you think of the subject of work, especially in terms of your most authentic life?
Well, my work is my mission. That's what I'm here to do.
That's beautiful. I mean, well, this is such an interesting picture because there's so many moving parts to it too. So is there anything else that comes up with you related to the work in regards to the authenticity? It is definitely is your mission. Like, is it changing? Does it continue to evolve?
Well, the interesting thing, my father was a watchmaker, and you see a lot of the similar parts that he would have on his workbench. So I'm going to say it's a work in progress. You're putting things together, you're taking things apart, and just taking what you can.
I love it.
From
And
it.
and it's always in movement. It's always changing. And how cool is that that's connected to your dad? I like came up.
Yeah.
So your daily compilation would be a collective confluence of your favorite all activities, all its cogs and wheels and parts that make a whole. So that's what I love about this too. It's like all these come together in this image that are all part of the greater whole. Which is also what's happening in our world. I think we're being called in our greater missions to come together and bring all different parts and shapes and sizes and colors and everything together and work more in community. And I've always referred to you as a humanitarian and an ambassador because you're always, through your energy work and everything, doing work to support the greater whole and the greater humanity. So this is such a perfect card to me to come up as the first of the 5 cards. I just think it's and
interesting.
Again, if we go back to the word honor, which is how we finished related to Sprout, because I do think Sprout was emblematic of honor. It was really neat to see that process come through for me in preparing for your interview, to really look at the value of honor. So I just think that this is a neat first card. So your second card is the stranger. When you look at this card, what comes up for you?
Well, I have to say that the person who sent the negative attack, apparently I did not really know who they were because I thought they were a friend of mine. And so that's immediately the thought that comes to mind.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, this appears as an outsider, but the door is open and this one is entering. This one is an aspect of you ready to be a more important part of your life. And it can be, possibly, can you see it as any kind of higher aspect of yourself that's ready?
Well, yeah, I think we all go through that. That's just my first thought, was what I shared. But yeah, I see that I like that aspect much better than mine. So, I'll go for that.
They're all pertinent, really, but it just is so interesting. And that door is kind of more of a golden door. If you look at its color and the luminescence and the brilliance of the color gold when it comes to healing, it's very largesse in what it brings to all of us, to be working with the color gold. Let's see. So card 3 is the friendship card. When you see this card, what feelings and thoughts arise for you?
Well, just what a blessing it is to have such wonderful friends. I am truly, that's one area I have been pretty much, with that one exception to the left, extremely blessed. And that would be, but not only that, that we need community. And I know I tend to isolate. We need to get out. We need to have community. I see the 3 people together. It's so important.
And one of the things that happens where 2 or more are gathered, or when 3 happens, is really when creativity blossoms, and that's one of the things that I have felt blessed to be a friend in your life as well, and to witness how many friends you have, Cathy. I mean, your ambassadorship and networking in this world, you've touched and compassionately touched. And it's neat that you're doing, his book is on unconditional love, because I think you've extended unconditional love to so many. You've been there with your energy work, supporting people when they were, close to death. I know there was one friend you kept up with for 5 years and kept her going through the work that you did, and the energy work and the love and support that you did. So, it doesn't surprise me that this is a card that's part of your authentic life. Because one of the things that I'm starting to hear more and more is that we are at a point as a species where we are going to be called to come together more and more in community, that we can no longer be introverts, we can no longer be idle, that it is about coming together in all our different, cogs and wheels, like it is in the first card, and coming together, like you said, in your answer, in community.
And with the 3 people too, the idea that we want to merge conscious, unconscious, and subconscious.
Perfect. That's great.
So that's another thought there.
Yeah. I mean, these cards are very, very deep level. They're one of those things where you can keep coming back to them like another month and come back to these same cards, especially in terms of thinking about your authentic life, like to really start to image, what does that look like? Like when we really can reach for that and create that as master creator beings, which I think human beings are. I just don't think
you're right.
Numbed down and programmed in so many ways that we're not tapping, but I think we're ready. I think we're merging into the beginning of that true tapping of what all we can create as a species and what all we're going to bring to the table. So in card 4, which is fortune, which again, I just love the cards that showed up, and I used the pendulum since you weren't here, to go ahead and pick your cards for you.
Yeah.
So as you can see, this one going up the spiral staircase, illuminating in gold light. How does this make you feel, and what comes up in the processing of this image?
This one is a wild one. All I can say, and I'm looking at it now with the spiral staircase and the little face looking out there. I guess what comes to mind is you have to do some examining, that there is fortune out there. It's part of the matrix, and we need to be aware of it.
And then when you look upstairs and see at the top of the steps that what does that case look like that's open?
Yeah, that's a case of gold, or a treasure chest.
Yes, that's what I was thinking. Treasure chest. And it's neat because it shows the lock on the outside, which is for you to put in your key, and your our keys that we carry within us and always have been a part of us, that we can continuously grow. Like even with everything you went through as Sprout, you gained some more keys of understanding. So it makes sense that and then I love how he's carrying that lantern.
Yeah, that's an interesting card.
It's great.
Yeah.
And it does have the number 12 on it, because they do number these cards.
Oh, okay.
But I like if you look in the background, there's, they show you the duality of the light and the dark. And yet what's also neat is that light is always with that one going up those steps, as if to say, you've always had the illumination as part of who you are, no matter what's come at you in the different ways that, the threads of things you would not wish for have come to you, but you've always had that light within you.
Very thought-provoking. I love
Yeah,
that card. Yeah.
I know. I love it too.
Yeah.
They're really fun.
Yeah.
So let's see. And what do you think would be your special destiny, your true fortune? Do you have an idea of what that would
Oh,
look like?
wow.
That's a
No,
biggie.
I'd have to give that some real thought. It wouldn't be necessarily monetary.
I believe that.
I think to see the world come together, mass consciousness come together, for us to lift up our true potential as our human race would be a great fortune.
Selfless service too. I like that idea as well.
Mhm.
Well, see, this is what you've been speaking of as an orator and teacher and healer in my experience with you for a long time, Cathy, is that bigger picture like that.
And I think we're working our way towards it. I am very optimistic that we can achieve it.
I totally agree with you. I totally agree. And we're seeing it's almost like in this case, the spiral staircase, the steps are definitely, coming together. Like this is a long set of steps and he's, going on the up part of it, getting higher and higher to the very top. And, but they all still come together, which is exactly like what you're describing, where all of this is coming together, and it's one of those things that'll be interesting to look back on, all that we've transmuted and come through to be at that place. And just a huge thank you for all that you've contributed, because I do know how many people you've reached out to. And then card 5 is the wheel. What comes up for you when envisioning your authentic self reality, and what does this card say to you with that?
That's very interesting. Well, I'd say, first of all, we need to take the wheel and realize we can create. And so that's the first thing I think of. But also I look at the first card and the last. They both have these wheel type things. So it all comes together that way as well, that life is, you go through cycles.
Yes.
Yeah. So a couple of things of that nature.
That's beautiful. And if you notice, the wheel is propped up against, and the strength that it's propped up against is a foundation. So the importance of foundation in your wheel of life.
Yeah, these are great cards.
And even if you think about it, with everything that you've weathered, everything that you've weathered with Sprout, the positive that came out of it was your foundation got stronger.
Well, and that would be an example of the wheel. We have to make that choice.
Yes.
And we turn the wheel in the direction we want to go.
Yes. And then if you notice the snow, which is right before the wheel, which melts down to water, that it's propped partially into, how does water factor into your authentic self?
I don't know.
I mean, because how much water is our body?
Well, that's very true.
It's like 80%.
Yeah.
And I think it's neat when you look at this as your 5th and final card of your authentic self, that it's showing a very substantially strong and solid foundation, that is a wall for your wheel of life and your wheel of time and cycles to be braced against, which is very cool. And then you also have the water, which, water is just also so beautiful because of its ease and flow. And it's so related, of course, to our emotions in the tarot. So yeah, and just even, when it's so crushing, when we're going through grief, to really look at, as tough as it is to have that level of crying, it's also so beautiful, that we have that level of crying, that our bodies can do that support through water of our hearts. It's like a cleansing of our hearts. So I think that's really neat. And then in the forefront is the hardy plant life that wishes to be a part of this wheel and your authentic self. When you consider the plant kingdom, which I think is so neat because of the sprout and the herb house you want to do, have you ever looked at the plant kingdom's importance to your overall evolution and wheel of time?
I think that's profound. You think about trees. Our true oneness, all the roots of the trees all over the planet are communicating.
Mm-hmm.
All the plants on Earth are communicating. If we humans could do the same, would that not be wonderful?
Yes, it would. And as master creators, we definitely have the capacity to do this.
I believe you. Yeah.
I mean, and the common denominator is that we, we're, first of all, that we're human, but we also come with such beautiful hearts. Like in this process of doing these interviews, I have fallen more and more in love with humanity because when I get to hear the gut-wrenching stories that everybody's weathered, and where they do things like you did, where you write this beautiful book, that can touch so many people at the right time and place when they're going through pet loss. I mean, it's just a nice testament to the beauty of us as human beings and that common denominator of what all of us do have in common.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So very, very cool. And then I thought this was interesting too, Cathy. You're going to love this. On the top of your website, you have Take the Wheel, create a timeline.
You're right. Isn't that funny? That thought came to me because I had a phenomenal webmaster who did so many creative things, but that thought came to me to have it just that way. And you're right. I hadn't even considered that.
Oh, when I saw it, I'm like, oh my gosh,
I'll be doggone. Well, and that was the thought I had with the wheel was take the wheel. But I forgot that I have that on my site.
Well, and even talking about timelines, one of the things I've been coming across this week for some reason and listening to people is there are people that have talked about what they call their awakening moment. And some people call it like a Kundalini experience, but it's fascinating to listen to the different ways that people have all of a sudden had some kind of awakening where they don't want to go down the path that they've been on that has taken them a wrong direction. And what was I going to get at with this? What were they saying? Let me think just for a second. I can't remember what it was, but it was something with where their life has so completely changed. And I know that they stepped into it's like they created a new timeline to move up. And I never ever thought of when people say that and share that they've had awakenings, however they've come to them, that it would be about that they've stepped into a new timeline. I look at timelines as the grooves on like an LP record, that it's almost that kind of step forward. So that's why I thought it was so cool that you spoke about the creating a new timeline.
Well, and that's what we have is a bunch of dimensions.
Right. Well, and just so cool to think that in this really rough way that Sprout's passing also supported you going into a new timeline of some sort.
It apparently did. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it just makes me glad to hear that there was that component in it and that illumination within its horrendousness. So thank you so much for your in-depth and compassionate sharing.
Annie, thank you. This has been enlightening for me beyond what I can describe. It's been wonderful.
I'm so glad. Well, I hope you have a remarkable weekend, and it's definitely been a pleasure being with you today. Thank you so much, and thank you for sharing your intimate story with other people that are bereaving pet loss, and I'm very grateful.
Thank you so much.